Good morning. Um, I was in conversation last night with two heads of state, and I realized what is truly devastating, and this general irony and hypocrisy surrounding the issue of the Denton Protocol. And I actually have a paper here of all my notes um, of what I discussed on that conversation. And I just want to run through it right now because I think the Denton Protocol is still tremendously important. Um, for those of if for those micronationalists who want to support transgender and gender nonconforming people's rights, then the Denton Protocol, I believe, um, is the better document because at the moment we have two documents, the Denton Protocol and the Lavaria Treaty. And I will actually follow that up with a different video of the differences between the two, um, and why I believe the Denton Protocol, even though I'm a bit biased because I wrote it, um, why I believe the Denton Protocol to be more proactive and uh, able to achieve actual change. Um, so first, I want to begin with an analysis of diplomacy and micronationalism. In macronations, in our larger states, nations often send diplomats to foreign countries where they must learn and accept local customs while still remaining loyal and have their allegiance to their home country. In this arrangement, they are on a sovereign state's territory, even though an embassy might be technically um, uh, the property of a different state, you're still residing and operating within a different sovereign state other than your own. So you have to learn local custom in order to be a good diplomat. Micronationalism, however, is vastly different. We meet in chat rooms, in groups all around the world, through the comfort of our own homes or of schools or libraries, any place that we can get an internet hotspot. But fundamentally, we meet on neutral ground. We do not meet on a different state's territory. We meet on our own territory and we send communication messages all across the world. So fundamentally, we communicate on neutral ground as diplomats. In this way, just like a diplomat going to a different country must learn the customs of that other country, um, we too must learn the other customs of the other country. In this regard, if someone does not believe in transgender identities, if they do not believe in gender nonconforming identities, non-traditional gender identities, uh, that is perfectly within their local custom and their sovereign rights. But fundamentally, if you refuse to recognize um, the trans identity of a different diplomat, of a different head of state, what you are doing, and some have accused me of this for the Denton Protocol, but what you are doing is violating that person's right to exist as they identify. You are essentially enforcing and infringing their rights by enforcing what you believe upon them. And so that's why I believe in micronational diplomacy. There must be a sort of synergy between how one diplomat confronts with their local custom what is courtesy, diplomatic courtesy in their locality, and understanding the other micronationalists. Sandus, and actually this is part of the history of micronational diplomatic courtesy. Um, in Sandus, we have actually given this up. The development of diplomatic courtesy and micronationalism has been, uh, and this is from my perspective, since 2009, the acceptance of pseudonyms, styles, and titles, leading to an understanding of privacy and security um, for micronationalists that are worried about it. And in Sandus, and what I was discussing before, is that in this sort of synergy, is that some micronationalists, in Sandus's experience, don't want to be addressed as Monsieur, either because of a dislike for um, how it appears gender neutral, its relationship to the GUM, or even they don't like fringe culture. Regardless, in an ideal world, Sandus would respect these. We don't at the moment because of the Denton Protocol, but that's for later. Assume, for instance, that Sandus still had these agreements, and we are willing to honor them, but there's that other part of the Denton Protocol that the others must accept. In Sandus, the development of non-Monsieur agreements um, is this sort of synergy that one state gives up their local custom of recognizing how diplomacy works and takes on the form of the other state, because both states must meet in neutral grounds. And this is far more complicated whenever one has to deal with multilateral relationships, not just going through, private message, but going through group chats. And when you have blocks of friends in those groups, then you get into different scenarios because there's power at hand in those situations. So the current situation, and the one that has inspired the Denton Protocol, is that transgender and gender non-binary people's pronouns, names, and identities are not respected or recognized. So at the moment, we have a subset of micronationalists who refuse to call, for instance, Queen Astrid of Zealandia, to call her a queen because she is trans. And that is fundamentally wrong because it goes back ultimately to the situation, the same vein of thought as the no addressing by Monsieur Accords. And ironically, the same people that refuse to address Queen Astrid or even the new Prime Minister for Zealandia by their preferred pronouns are the same people, the very same people that Sandus has made accords with not to address them as Monsieur. Those people are Jaroslav Mar and Bradley van der Hoeven. And it is completely hypocritical of them for in one instance to require of Sandus to address them as Mr. In all communication, even public articles on Veredum Sandus. That is the terms of that sort of gentleman's agreement that we went off of. And at the same moment, and this is what the Denton Protocol does, it addresses this situation, this sort of hypocrisy and non-linear thought, by going to the actual situation and saying, if you do not respect the identity of trans people and how they identify and how they express themselves, then we will renege as well on the agreements we have with addressing you as Monsieur. And then the protocol actually has a lot of leeway, especially because it's not enforced, that people can do whatever they wish. They can address another person, for instance, as Madame Marsupial, silly things like that. It's fundamentally, however, not accurate of these micronationalists to say that Sanders is imposing our beliefs on them. The reason I say this is because these micronationalists in the past have made a choice, and I'm speaking specifically to the situation with Messieurs Mar and Vanderhoeven, where they've required that Sanders not address them as Monsieur or any French address. And because of agreements like those, it is the reason why the Denton Protocol is reneging on them, because they refuse to address trans micronationalists as is appropriate according to their identity and their expression. So really, there is a situation here where they can fix this rather easily. They don't have to agree with trans identities existing. They don't have to agree with what it fundamentally means. But they lost the choice to say that they are addressing one according to their national custom. They lost that opportunity and all right to speak on that when they signed the agreement with Sanders to address them as Mr. instead of Monsieur. And trust me, this was a very diplomatic thing, because in Sanders we gave up our strong belief and our hold on our national custom. And we respected that other people have their national customs, and we recognize that diplomacy is fundamentally a neutral space. Of course, I'm sure people will spin this and say that no matter what, it's infringing on their rights of conscience and speech, that they can say whatever they want, and that's true. But then at the same time, so can Sanders. So can we also say that we will renege on these agreements if they refuse to address trans people correctly. So fundamentally, it's the same situation, just the tables have turned. So in the next video, I will actually address why the differences between the treaty and the protocol.